Video games have yielded some truly exceptional narratives over the years, with deep, complex plots that will leave you crying, laughing, or even requesting a new pair of underwear. But the problem with these branching storylines and moral choice chicanery is that plot holes start to appear. Cracks in the otherwise beautiful buttocks of titles which end up making you feel like an arse for buying it. And sometimes those holes can be formed by just one simple question, like why didn't they do this? Or where did that thing go? Or Jules, why do you keep a dead homeless man in the boot of your car? With this in mind, I'm Jules for WhatCulture.com here with a list of 10 simple questions that break famous video game stories in half. Number 10. Why was the Locust Horde's leader a human woman? As satisfying as it was to turn the muscle-bound albino Locust Horde into organ jelly, isn't it a bit weird that their leader was a human woman? It's not at all who you think would be heading up this pale pandemic, but there she is in all her flesh-toned glory. How does she have so much sway over a race which is pretty much hell-bent on eradicating humanity from the surface? Now, this is actually a point which is explained a little bit more in the books which accompany the franchise, but it's such a weird thing to exclude from the actual games themselves. Why wouldn't we want to know why there's some smoking hot piece of armoured ass leading a pasty death parade against humanity? Now don't get me wrong, she's a great antagonist who really pulls all the right switches to make the hunt for her in Gears 3 a real joy. But it's really difficult to accept that her design was favoured over a super intelligent Locust brute along the lines of Ram, when it would have been so much easier, and make more sense, to go with the latter. Number 9. Fallout 3. Why can't somebody immune to radiation activate the purifier? Come the close of Fallout 3's main story, you're tasked with activating a water purifier for the good of humanity. A simple premise by the sounds of it. Well, disregarding the fact that water doesn't actually seem to be in short supply at all when it comes to your own inventory, rejigging that purifier isn't an easy task when there's pesky radioactive material circling all around the place. However, super mutants are immune to radiation, and if you happen to have the friendly Fawkes riding along with you, it left you with a situation of just staring at the screen and wondering why the option had been left out to let him go in and do the deed. Bethesda just apparently hadn't noticed, and it wasn't until the Broken Steel DLC, which if you remember they charged for, that there was then an option to send in Fawkes or any other character immune to radiation in your stead. For this simple act of making me pay to not die, it makes the list. Number 8. How many last Metroids are there? The setup of nearly all Metroid games is that the last Metroid is in captivity, the galaxy is now at peace. However, the galaxy is very much not at peace, and it's always this air quotes last Metroid that proves to be the problematic element that forces protagonist Samus into action. The weirdest thing, though, is that Samus has actually killed the last Metroid numerous times by now. This event seems to have taken place 3 separate times across the series so far, which raises the question, just how many last Metroids are there, or is this some sort of space pirate version of Groundhog Day? Number 7. Where did Jack Marston get his experience? John Marston's death at the end of Red Dead Redemption is probably one of the most traumatizing and emotional video game moments in history, and it's a weight that we arguably feel more when we take up the reins of his son some 3 years later. Jack is no John, he's not the outlaw we came to love, yet somehow he's just as good a shot as his dad, and has the same immense hat hair. John Marston's, let's say, unsavoury career as an outlaw is a big part of what turned him into the deadly frontiersman that players took control of, but Jack has none of that same experience. It makes so little sense for Jack to be as skilled as John, especially given that a ton of the pair's interactions earlier in the game show Jack to be a mild-mannered intellectual. Just how was he able to become a dead-eyed sharpshooter without the helpful guidance of his father during these 3 years? Number 6. So who's actually immune to zombie viruses? Okay, so one of the many things that The Last of Us did right was show us that all it takes is one bite for a person to become infected with its terrifying face fungus. Mess up and boom, dead. Start over. It's a shame, therefore, that nearly all other zombie games forego their own rule of once bitten, forever dead in favour of having their protagonist just shrug it off. Dead Rising's Frank West loses a fair few pints of vino before the game decides, oh wait, no, actually, yeah, he's infected. But the biggest criminal on this corpse cavalcade is Resident Evil, where main heroes get chunks taken out of them left, right and centre with nary a worry. And yeah, while it wouldn't be as engaging to not see the blood fly every time you mess up, it sure does lessen the idea of a rampaging infection when you can just shrug it off and pop a few ibuprofen. Number 5. Why doesn't Outlast reporter break a window or climb a fence? Outlast is undoubtedly one of the scariest video games of this generation, leaving a leaky river of brown in its wake. Taking players on a first-person tour through a terrifying setting populated populated by murderous psychopaths and supernatural nasties, the game was packed with jump scares and more horrifying twists than checking your dad's search history. Playing as a trap journalist intent on documenting the events inside Mount Massive Asylum, we are thrown further into this mad hell and are forced to survive a painful journey in order to escape. However, in truth, there were so many simpler ways of getting out. While some of the doors and exits are very clearly unusable, there are more than enough windows to break or fences to climb over across the course of this game. Now, I might not be the best of climbers all told, but if I were in that asylum, you bet I'd be scurrying up the wall like a woodlouse before my camera even lost its first battery. Number 4. How does Barry Wheeler power anything in Bright Falls? Bright Falls is a veritable nightmare, and our hero's inability to leave or even figure out what's going on is backed by strong storytelling for the most part. Working his way through the eerie town, Alan has to rely on the powers of light to work his way past shadowy figures under the influence of the mysterious dark presence. Light sources and battery-powered torches are of course a premium in this town, and Alan's adventure becomes a series of mad yet measured dashes from one safe point to the next. But then we have Barry Wheeler, who seemingly has no issue finding the light. Despite Alan's struggle to relight the dark areas of Bright Falls, Barry is always conveniently able to find something to illuminate things. This comes at the expense of the story, however, leaving us to wonder why Alan wouldn't simply just stay by Barry's side if he's always just so immune to the dark. Number 3. How does the Normandy's crew escape so fast in Mass Effect 3? To say that the original endings from Mass Effect 3 caused some uproar is like saying that I love the sound of my own voice. It's quite the understatement. But one question that really bugged me rotten concerns the fate of Shepard's crew. As you'd imagine, these companions fight staunchly alongside their leader during the final stages of the game, making the relationships you forged with them over the endless dialogue and side missions feel genuinely meaningful. Take your eye off the action for a second, however, though, and they're all gone. Making an apparently instant teleport back to the Normandy and seemingly managing to get thousands of miles away from the mass relay blasts, Shepard's crew pulled off one of the most insanely convenient and, dare we say it, Star Trek-esque escapes in sci-fi history. If such feats of speed are possible, how did anyone even end up getting killed by the Reapers at all? And then there's the question of why our companions would abandon us so readily after all we've been through, but let's not depress ourselves with the thought of that right now. Number 2. Why not use a Phoenix Down to revive Aerith? It may be a question that's been asked by thousands of players over the years, but in the absence of a satisfactory answer, it simply has to be asked again. Why, oh why, was the death of Aerith in Final Fantasy VII not preventable? Or more specifically, why couldn't a Phoenix Down or similar spell have been used to revive her immediately? Given that a Phoenix Down can restore somebody's HP has been drained to 0, and we have to assume that getting stabbed like this would do that to you, why wouldn't this have worked? And yes, I know that many of you out there will be like, she's dead, not KO'd, and to that I say, 1, trust me, I know the difference between the two, just look at my Tinder history for proof of that, and 2, how is this not dead, but this is? Answer me that, oh internet warrior. And number 1, if your ghost brings you back to life, how are there no respawn zones? For all the criticisms about Bungie's MMO shooter, concerns about the story have been few and far between, but there's one big one sat right under our noses. Okay, so given that the ghost is able to revive the player's guardian from the dead at the start of the game, how is the existence of any no respawn zone justified? The ghost doesn't leave the player's side when they enter these so-called dark zones, so what stops them from being useful in these more dangerous areas? It's not as if we see them ever getting destroyed by enemies, so why would being forced back to a more peaceful checkpoint make any conceivable sense in the realms of that story? In truth, the inclusion of dark zones are simply a mechanic to make the game more difficult in patches, but it's a fairly lazy tool and one that leaves us questioning the validity of the story and the lore around it. Finding some other way to up the campaign difficulty in this sections may have been more work for the developers, but it would have been worth the effort to preserve the narrative integrity of an apparently burgeoning new IP. And that's our list. Do you have any more plot holes for me to stick my word on into? Well, let me know about them in the comments below. And if you can answer any of these logic gaps, then come chat with me here or on my personal Twitter, RetroJ with a 0. If you enjoyed the video, then like, share and subscribe for more. As always, I've been Jules from WhatCulture.com, and I'll see you soon.